Okay, so I'm going to do some reaction videos. I think I've given a good foundation of philosophy. It's time to start doing some reaction videos. So people will understand when I'm talking about things philosophically, what to refer to. So racism. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and I've actually made a few videos that I've thrown away because I know that no matter how you put it or how you say it, it's like landmines everywhere. And so I'm going to just put it out there totally unscripted like this. So what I've come to see is that racism isn't really a thing, okay? It's culturalism. Culturalism is the true problem, and it's balancing of culturalism that is a problem, or eliminating it, moderating it. So when people see somebody that looks different than them, they don't know if that person is a killer or the nicest person in the world. And so the reaction is already going to be one of caution, right? To preserve your self-interest. And that's evolutionary, so we react, I don't know who that person is. If they're much bigger than you, that's a little bit more scary than if they're smaller than you. And you don't know them. You don't have a social contract with that person. Your culture has a lot to say about whether or not you feel like the people around you are accepting a peaceful social contract. So if you're in a situation with a lot of different kinds of people, and those people don't integrate, or they're there just for the money. Let's say they've come to the area just to make money and they don't want to integrate. Then actually the social contract is broken straight out of the gate. So you can't ever feel comfortable. You want to believe that people are generally good, and you're constantly being told by moderates that people are generally good. And a lot of times it probably is true, but if it is true, that's not really anything to worry about. What's to worry about is if it isn't true and that person hates different people or is exclusive. And so the appearance of the person is an indicator of their culture, right? So it's not always true, but in a lot of cases it is. So it's like racism is like you're wearing the uniform of culture X. Therefore, I know culture X is exclusive and they do, XYZ, which I don't agree with. And so since you appear to be from culture X, it's very likely that the social contract between you and I is not existent, and you're much bigger than I, or we're alone in a dark alley or whatever. And so evolutionarily speaking, our guards go up, right? And so living like that is not really everywhere you go. There's different kinds of people that you don't know if you can trust. It produces a certain amount of anxiety. Whereas if you're in a homogenous area where people share the same social contract, the problem is that homogenized areas sort of lateralize violence rather than internalize it. So if they're not inclusive, the social contract is more of one stick your head up and it gets beat, right? It's community insistence, peer pressure, and that produces like a homogeneous balance between everybody, but it doesn't necessarily translate into a more peaceful type of existence. In fact, I'd say actually the most peaceful situation is a balance between the homogenized situation and the all-inclusive situation. On the all-inclusive side, we have to watch for the paradox of tolerance, that we can't include and tolerate those who would destroy that tolerance or that minority acceptance or minority mitigation as it needs to work with a utilitarian ideal. Those on the identity side that lead into like particularity and regional particularity or historical, I'd say cultural, but that's kind of too general. More like historical particularity are fighting amongst each other in like schismed factions, right? So those kinds of identity groups, after they eliminate the obvious difference, after they've attacked and destroyed and chased away those that are the obvious, that long list of people that are obviously different than us, then they turn on each other. And they keep fighting and fighting and fighting. There's no end to that because there's no real social contract. It's just identity particularity that happens to coincidentally get along at the ground level indirectly because people need to survive. But that's always going to lead to limitation, leading to violence when there's no there's no honor among thieves, is what it boils down to, is that in the end, it's going to be mad, mutually assured destruction, right? Do we need to live in a world where everybody has to have nuclear weapons in order to prevent the launching of nuclear weapons at each other? It's safer if everybody has nuclear weapons so that we ensure that nobody uses nuclear weapons. I think it was Zachary Bell who said something along the lines of, it'd be nice to believe that the world can come together over epiphany, but it's very likely that it's world trade that will bring peace. And I totally agree with that. And it's cynical and terrible that, that we can't just rally around our universal humanity. But in reality, global trade has brought the equivalent, for all intents and purposes, of world peace. If you look at history is horrendously violent, and actually we have the equivalent of world peace right now, believe it or not. There's horrible things going on, but given the scope of the amount of people, it's pretty close to a peaceful world, although it's not a great quality of life for the majority. Back to my point about racism being culturalism, identity groups, people look at what you look like, and then you identify with, culture XYZ, and then that's why they exclude you along with the evolutionary difference. So that's why we get identity groups who say, look, I have person X, I have person Y, I have person Z. We're not racist. The point is that you have people that look like X, and you have people that look like Y, and you have people that look like Z, but they've moderated and changed themselves to be the culture that you expect. So they're actually using the correct definition of racism, which is just the appearance of a person. But nobody really flinches just because somebody appears different. It's because they believe that the social contract is not there, and they don't feel safe with people that are different than them, and that there's a good amount of probability that if you look like this, that your culture is probably this, and people in this culture at the extremes rally around XYZ. So that's like sort of the core of racism. It's actually culturalism. I think we need to get our minds around that before we'll be able to address it. It's crazy because if you just say something like, I love Italian food. I happen to be like 40% Italian, so I love Italian food. That's effectively racist. Because it's not okay. And when I say it's racist, I mean it's culturalist, and it's not negating all other foods necessarily outside of Italian. And I think on Blue Sky they had this argument, the Waffle House argument, where if you go to a Waffle House and you walk in and you say, you guys hate pancakes, right? It's not equivalent to that, but relativizing it doesn't make sense either. So you're going to say, oh, you can't walk into a Waffle House and say, you guys hate pancakes. But what you can do is say, I prefer waffles over pancakes. And so that is, whether you like it or not, putting waffles at 1 and pancakes at 2. While you're not saying pancakes are negated, you're saying pancakes are lesser. And so to relativize it is wrong. It's okay to point out that it's not an absolute negation, but to pretend that it's not affirmed at a higher level and another at a lower is disingenuous, okay? And it's intellectually lazy. So if we do accept that, saying that I love my food, the food of my identity, particularity, my arbitrary geographical area, we're all citizens and humans of Earth first. Secondly, we have this line drawn around where we are, and we give it a name, and that becomes nationalism, a subjective deviation, a particularity, a subjective deviation. And now I say I love Italian food. I am now saying, other foods are less than Italian food. While I'm not saying they're all horrible, I'm saying I at least prefer Italian over some other kind of food. And that says something. It's more and less rather than all or nothing. And that's a massive part of life. And people that can't get their mind around the more or less as opposed to the more absence and presence, you're missing like basically all of life that I can tell, because absence and presence is, I think, more fabricated than more or less. So anyway, This is a reaction video, and I wanted to show this video that seems like someone who's leaning right. The video is generalized, so you can barely detect it in there. But I just wanted to talk about racism there because I've been wanting to do it for a long time. And so let's do this reaction video.
Is anyone else scared to be British at the moment and is seriously concerned about the state of this country and where it's headed? Because I am pretty scared. I personally think it's absolutely terrifying how being proud to be British is now seen as being racist, and how the Union Jack is now seen as a symbol of being racist. And I think that...
Okay, so that is happening in America too. I'm American, and this is exactly the same thing that's happening here. And it's because leaning into nationalism is to lean into exclusion. You're giving it a single name. You're saying it's X, and you're saying, so if you're not X, then, saying that I want X or I love X or I'm all about X is the same as saying, you're not X, so you're excluded, right? And she's basically saying what I said in the beginning, that she's not identifying that affirmation and negation are the absolute. She doesn't want to be negated for simply saying that, this is more important than you being here. And in a sense, practically speaking, functionally speaking, people can be moved easier than their minds can be changed. We need to start thinking about this really quickly, and we need to do something about it. I'm not saying that liberals had it wrong in the past. No, they were absolutely correct. But in this world, AI, the internet, redistribution, all that stuff's going to become more important than these fucking ridiculous arguments that we're arguing right now at the minute. We need to redistribute everything. We need to work on UBI. We need to get oligarchs under control. All these things have to be done, and we can't do it by insisting on identity, particularity, and exclusion as absolutes in affirmation and negation. We need to recognize that what it is more or less. So when people are calling you racist for affirming to be British, that's not exactly true, right? Because it's just a little bit racist because you're affirming something that's indirectly negating others. But you're not going to the level of saying you want them dead. You'd just rather have them outside of your home so you're not the one excluded in the place where you live. But I'll take that a step further and say what you call home is an identity particularity. Like your essence, your universality, your humanity transcends that particularity called Britain. It transcends that particularity of American. And so when you're excluding based on that nationality, you're missing the point of your universality. But the people that are there in your country are also being nationalists for their country too. So it's wrong on all sides. Nationality is a fucking illness, okay? It's a sickness. You need to roll it all back. We do need districts, in order to control health. But nationalism is a failure on all sides.
That's incredibly sad, and it makes me really, really fucking angry. It makes me so angry when I think about all the people who have fought for Britain and to keep our country safe over the years, and it now just feels like...
History is a net for identity retribution and tit for tat. The initial problems are finite, but they're captured in history, and the retribution and the fighting is infinite. Nobody's out there saying, okay, this is the amount of fighting that it would take in order for that to be justly resolved. It never happens. Once it's recorded in history, it keeps coming back forever to haunt us. But then again, we can't be stupid about it. We can't forget history. The only reason we advance is by remembering history. So there's an empathy trap. And I think liberals really, universalists, we need to watch that too, as well as the paradox of tolerance, the empathy trap. We need to watch that.
Like, to be British and to say you're British and to be proud of it, to sing the national anthem it gets booed in our own country.
It's just a temporary thing.
Jack to school for a cultural day, you get told to go home. Like, what the hell is happening? How expensive everything is, how difficult it is to buy a house. Like, I'm someone who
This is a worldwide problem.
I have 2 jobs, I run a successful business, and...
Okay, that oligarchy talking points, all right? I'm completely independent of the government. I don't need any help. These immigrants, all they do is take my tax money, blah, 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 blah. Okay? None of that matters anymore because all the jobs are going to be gone with AI and robots. Forget about that. It's fucking over. Okay? We need more government regulation at this point. We need to be light speeding government regulation to capture a UBI, or it's more likely, they'll regulate prices. They'll push prices down with whatever benefit. Or it'll turn into all-out civil unrest and we'll end up beheading the oligarchy. And that's why they're hiding. That's why Zuckerberg's taken off to an island, If we can't get the balance done, we're coming after people like Zuckerberg. So, he's got the right idea. We all know where you are.
It was made so difficult for me to buy a house because I was self-employed and I was on my own. And you just think, I've lived in this...
It's the same thing here in America.
...country from day dot. Like,
they cook the books here, though.
I've never claimed anything off this country at all. And
see that right there. Just claim something. It's okay to need things.
Difficult. And it makes me angry and it makes me scared for where this country is headed. I don't know if anyone else feels like this.
Yeah, the whole world feels like that.
Even talking about it, I feel like it's just controversial. But I want to be proud to be British again. I want to be able to...
No! Forget about it. Move on.
Everything surrounding that, and it just feels like we're not allowed to do that anymore without being called racist.
They're called racist because nationalism is being used as an absolute exclusion for culturalism, and the people that are there are often there just for money. They don't want to become British, so I understand the identity conflict, but again, that's not universal, right? That's still just particularity arguing against particularity. We need to get past that if we're going to survive just the next 10 fucking years. Anyway, I just wanted to talk a little bit about this. I'll probably be doing more reaction videos because it's so important. I wanted to stick to philosophy. I didn't want to pollute my channel with particularity, but I have a whole channel list of evergreen videos, and I'll add to it when I feel like I want to do philosophy, but maybe I'm going to be doing some more reaction videos. If you guys like this kind of content, this reaction videos, like the video, subscribe to the channel. And those of you guys who like philosophy, I'll still be doing that, here and there.